So, ladies and gentlemen, we are starting our session. The topic for this panel is on disruptive technologies, impact and leadership from Africa. It is a rich topic, and I am honored to be the moderator for the topic. And I will give our panel members time to introduce themselves and later on dive deep into the subject matter. Before that, I would like to give a general overview of the topic. But in addition to the members of the panel that are here, Kevin Govenda, Prince Osei, Chomoro Mikeka, we have one person online, Nevin Makram, who has not been able to join us physically, but she's going to join us online. We are currently at the center of the great technological revolution that is evolving fast in all fields, including AI, quantum computing, and astronomy. And the private sector with large resources is developing at unprecedented pace the next generation of disruptive technologies. In a parallel, nations around the world and organizations are still looking into how to approach this technological shift with a local perspective, with limited international inclusion, solidarity, and collaborations. There are huge opportunities for leadership in Africa and for African nations to stay ahead in this transition by supporting and promoting experts and research centers and developing policies adapted to countries and continental realities. Learning from developed countries, the overall goal is to utilize disruptive technologies to develop novel innovations, impact on industrial growth that lead to socio-economic development of Africa. This panel will discuss how these technological advances will change existing innovation landscape to accelerate businesses and markets in different fields of global and African perspectives for the next step. For instance, how will South-South and South-North collaborations unfold? As I said, I am honored to moderate a panel of experts in the area of disruptive technologies. And on my immediate left, Kevin Govenda is the Director, International Astronomical Union, Office of Astronomy for Development in South Africa. And on my extreme right, we have Chomoro Mikeka, Director of Science, Technology, and Innovation, Ministry of Education, Malawi. And on my right, we have Prince Korea Osei, Center President of AIMS Ghana and lead scientist and Director Quantum Leap Africa in Ghana. As I said, we have online Nevin Makram, Director of Social and Cultural Planning Center and Head of Digital Transformation Committee in Egypt. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to give an opportunity to our panel members to give some brief introductory remarks of who they are, the work they do in the context of disruptive technologies. So, Kevin Govenda, can you give, please, your remarks? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to INGSA for inviting us and to be part of this panel. So I'm in the astronomy world. What does astronomy have to do with any of these topics like disruptive technologies? What is astronomy? Have any of you been to a really dark sky place where, no lights, away from the city, and you see this completely clear sky, and you wonder what's out there? Well, our job is to figure out what's out there. Where are we in the universe? And the big questions like, where did the universe come from? Where are we going? And to do this, we need to push the boundaries of our science and technology. If we've only got these little tiny bits of light coming from really, really far away, how do we capture them? How do we make sense of them? I mean, when you in this dark sky place and you look up at the sky, every star that you see, you might think that it looks like this, ceiling of stars, but some are nearby, some are far away, and there's no way that your eye will be able to tell you which one is close by, which one is far away. It's a three-dimensional sky that that you have there. But I'm also part of the International Astronomical Union. And what does this have to do with society? Why do we have to sort of look up and try to solve these big problems? The International Astronomical Union is the group of professional astronomers that sort of safeguard the science of astronomy. And one of the things they're famous for is when Pluto was sort of demoted as a planet, and it's like, okay, we only have 8 planets now. Well, those are things that affect all of society, and it affects everyone. When we make a discovery, so astronomy pushes on the technology side, things like Wi-Fi, things like CCD cameras, even the definition of a second in time. But it also pushes on the philosophical side. I mean, imagine if we discovered a signal from a planet somewhere. This disrupts our society's understanding of who we are and our place in the universe. And this is important because the statement that we make as scientists within the astronomy field is about the importance of having one's ambition, being able to push technology and science, but still staying humble because the world cares about what you do. It's about the importance of the ivory tower coming down to earth. And I'll round out with this one quick example is that so have you heard of the Hubble Space Telescope? Everyone sort of must have heard of Hubble Space Telescope, right? So one of the founders of our office, Office of Astronomy for Development, was Bob Williams. And when he was the director of the Space Telescope Science Institute, he was in charge of Hubble. And he decided one day, I'm going to use my director's discretionary time to point this big telescope at just a dark patch of the sky, just to see what happens. And everyone said, this is career suicide. You can't take this massive space telescope and point it at a dark spot. We know that there's not going to be anything that you see. And he was like, no, but as a kid, I always wondered about the dark places between stars. And he took that, that curiosity that he had as a child. He maintained that connection to our humanity and used the technology that we had to try and figure things out. And that image that he got was now referred to as the Hubble Deep Field, was one of the most breakthrough sort of images in the world. It showed us that there were actually a huge amount of
Kevin, you could keep it short because we are going to give you an opportunity to go to dive deep into the subject
I thought I was going for my 6 minutes. Okay, so let me just conclude by saying that these sort of the idea that when we study something, whatever science we do, no matter how deep we get into our science, we have to be conscious of bringing it back to people on the ground. And I think that I think is my main message, and because that's how we address the inequality we have in this field.
Thank you, Kevin. And Prince, can you introduce yourself and give us the work you do in terms of quantum leap technology? Keep it short because much more is coming from you as we expect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for inviting me. So I lead quantum science. I lead the quantum science at the Quantum Leap Africa in Kigali. And one of the goals of Quantum Leap is to prepare Africa for the coming quantum revolution. And I am also the Center President for AIMS in Ghana. I am a quantum scientist, and I work on areas in quantum gravity and quantum information, which I'll throw more light on later.
Thank you. And Tomorrow, Mikeka, can you introduce yourself and let us know what you work on and in the context of disruptive technologies? Thank you.
Thank you, moderator Eugene. I am Chomora Mikeka, an associate professor of physics, but trained engineer, bachelor's, master's, and PhD. I'm grateful for the Japanese who are present in here and the other room, because I studied my engineering from Yokohama National University in Japan. Currently, apart from being associate professor of physics in the University of Malawi and visiting professorship at the University of Rwanda in African Center of Excellence in IoT, where also we're handling issues of digital imaging technologies, including disruptive technologies. I am the sitting director of science, technology, and innovation in the government of Malawi. Now done 3 years, I am the inaugural director for this directorate to situate the importance of science, technology, and innovation in country, which should, as it promises, to transform, economic growth and development using, unconventional approaches and beyond the budget policy and budget provisions. I think being the director responsible for that, all known technologies, traditional, but also upcoming, emerging, come on my desk. And disruptive technologies are just one and a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you. So we want to give an opportunity to the member of the panel who is online, Neveen Makram. Is she online and available? Please introduce yourself and dive deep into the subject matter. From science to policy perspective, what will be the main impact of continuing development of different technologies on science, as well as science advice, giving examples of Egypt, but also African continental perspective?
Okay, so good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for the introduction, and delighted to be with you. Wish I could be with you in person, but with the online, at least we can meet. So I am Neveen Makram. I'm professor of computer science, specialized in artificial intelligence and data science. I'm currently the director of the Social and Cultural Planning Center in the INP, which is the Institute of Planning in Egypt, of National Planning in Egypt. And we're currently working on policies, how to bridge the gap between science and policy, how to make data-driven decision-making reality. So our work is about, we're actually kind of a think tank of scientists working in different domains. And we're working on policy papers and research papers related to projects, mainly mega projects. We're focusing on Africa nowadays, and we're focusing on healthcare and education, because these are the two main priorities in our country, Egypt. Besides, I am the vice president of INGSA, which is the Egyptian Society of Information Systems and Computer Technology. Actually, regarding science, I think that now with the advancements and with the emerging technologies and artificial intelligence technologies, we can enhance the capabilities when it comes to research, because we're having now more tools and more techniques that are available for scientists. We're providing scientists with more facilities and more capabilities. And with all of these tools, we'll be able to tackle the currently faced challenge, not only on local level, but also on regional level. So when it comes to Africa, for example, we have the genomic data. Now we're working on the Genome Project, which is kind of a very important project not only for Egypt, but for Africa. We are working on data. Here we're talking about real big data, and we're applying set of analytics using smart technologies and artificial technologies in order to be able to get some insights, to discover some patterns related to the genes, so as to be able to know how to handle many issues, especially when it comes to healthcare. So, for example, we'll be having some predictions related to what will be happening next in the next 10 years and how to get all of our countries in Africa ready. We need to be ready maybe with some virtual hospitals, with some different treatments in different domains and so on. We also aim at tackling the other main challenge, which is the climate change, the food security, and so on. So I think that by providing artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies, we'll be able to cooperate and collaborate as scientists and find some innovative solutions to the currently faced challenges in Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Be giving you some follow-up questions at some point. Keep with us so that we continue to interact with you. And so the next question is going to go to Kevin. Could you give us some examples of the discoveries in the field of astronomy that you have been involved in that have impacted the society, and perhaps where is the place of South Africa and Africa at large in coordinating these efforts around the world and around the African continent? Thank you.
How many minutes?
6 minutes.
Okay. Okay, so so discoveries in astronomy. So there's two aspects to what's come out of astronomy. One is on the technological side. Now, I was saying earlier, when you try to explore the universe, you need to push the technology so that we try to solve these big problems. And so out of that has come unexpected technologies. Now, I mentioned Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi that we use today is something that came out of radio astronomers trying to optimize for radio signals. Something like a CCD camera that we all have on our phones was about, basically trying to catch as much photons as possible. But these are sort of on the technological side. I think the biggest thing that astronomy has done is it has disrupted the way we see ourselves and the way we see society. Now the biggest advance that we made was with the telescope. And then Galileo, 400 years ago, turned this telescope to the moon and the planets and figured out that the Earth was not the center of the universe anymore. And of course, then he thought the sun was the center of the universe. But that resulted in a massive change because at that time, religion dominated our society. And so when astronomy comes in and says, wait, but what you thought you understood about religion is different, it changes society. And these are the things that, we don't know what we're going to discover, but we explore. And it's a human nature to explore. Now, on the African continent, and how, when we look at humanity as a whole, this is where, the question comes, well, who is the human being? If we are pushing, if astronomy as a field is pushing the ideas, expanding human knowledge, then are all humans on the planet, firstly, participating in this process, and secondly, aware of the outcomes? Now, in astronomy at the moment, it's a really important time for the African continent. Over the last 20 or 30 years, South Africa in particular, but other African countries as well, have invested in astronomy to contribute to this exploration of the universe. And we are seeing the fruits of this now, where recently in 2018, the Karoo Array Telescope was inaugurated in South Africa. And the images that were generated are the best images of the galaxy, of our Milky Way galaxy, of anywhere in the world. And this project was completely built, you know, within South Africa, with the South African taxpayer money, by South African scientists. Now, this was a huge statement that, you know, when you have a field like astronomy, something that is you know, really difficult, and it's a challenge to all of society, that Africa can play a leadership role in contributing. Now, that statement of Africa's ability to contribute to the hardest problems, challenges that we can think of, makes a huge statement about the potential of the African continent. Now, that's not the only area that's on the pure science side, but on the impact side, South Africa bid and currently hosts the Office of Astronomy for Development. That's the office that I'm affiliated to. And that's a global office. It coordinates 11 regional offices around the world. And its purpose is to use astronomy to make the world a better place. Now, it takes all aspects of astronomy, whether it's the inspirational aspects, the technological aspects, the economic development prospects through tourism, and leads the world in trying to reap the benefits from astronomy. This is also something that's led from the African continent. And these developments over the years have led to the International Astronomical Union coming this year for the first time to the African continent. It's going to be the first time on the African continent that we will be hosting the International Astronomical Union's General Assembly. And we're using this opportunity, so this will take place in August this year, and we're using this opportunity to say, look at astronomy as an example of what Africa is capable of, what Africa is capable of leading in terms of science globally. And so when the world comes to Africa, you know, around the subject of astronomy, we're trying to sort of, if I can say, bring the ivory tower down to earth. We've decided to go full open access and try to engage the world in saying, if you are interested in, if you are curious, which is a natural, you know, human feature, then let our scientists talk directly to the people. And that's sort of the principle that we're going for, to ensure that, you know, at the end of the day, one of the biggest challenges we have on this planet is the inequality, and we want to have scientists engage directly with people. And astronomy is a good way of doing that because everybody can see the stars.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate. Thank you. I appreciate.
Like that.
It is exciting to know that there is an intersection between astronomical discoveries and religion. That is how disruptive technology can impact on society. And we shall have more time to discuss that. But let me give an opportunity to Prince. Could you explain how and what quantum computing will change the society in the forthcoming years? And how will this impact society in your perspective?
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll look at quantum technologies broadly. So quantum technologies are a way of harnessing or taking advantage of basic laws of physics, fundamental laws of quantum physics, to enable new ways in which one can store information, process information, or transmit information. And these new ways are pushing boundaries in applications in computing, in sensoring, and also in communication. So quantum technologies has these three aspects, which is the computing, the sensing, and the communication. And this promises to be the most disruptive technology ever, and will also provide big opportunities to impact industry, different kinds of industries, including healthcare, climate, energy, and so on. Quantum computing in particular, it's a way of accelerating computing, again, using these fundamental laws of physics, of quantum theory. Quantum physics has been around for almost 100 years. So next year will be exactly 100 years since the formulation of quantum physics. And it has already impacted us a lot. The electronics we have today, the transistors at the core of the electronics we have today is from quantum physics, lasers, LED lights, and so on. But today, it is leading us to a new generation of technology in this information science and technology. So for quantum computing, it allows very powerful ways of solving complicated problems that our classical computers are not able to solve. And this has a lot of applications. For example, how one can simulate physical systems for drug discovery, agriculture, and so on. And then when it comes to the quantum sensing is just instruments that allow you to measure precise measurements of things like time, acceleration, changes in electromagnetic fields and electric fields. And this, again, will impact our lives in a very dramatic way. For example, when it comes to underground surveillance, mineral discovery, it can play a very huge role. Discovery of resources, medical imaging, scanning, even detecting of certain kinds of complications in the human body, and so on. And the way we measure things that affect our environment for climate change. So quantum sensing is also a very important piece of the technology. And then we have quantum communication, which also leverages on protocols between quantum networks, which is the sensors and the computers, allow us to transmit large information, and also allow us to be able to communicate. And these applications of this include quantum cryptography that will be able to establish new ways of transferring data between quantum systems, and then also quantum machine learning, and so on. So this is just a broad overview of what these emerging quantum technologies are. Now, there's a risk of a quantum divide, which is the gap between regions and countries that have established quantum technology programs, and then regions that are not. And this gap will lead to a significant impact in areas of cybersecurity, defense, healthcare, finance, and manufacturing. So in one of the discussions over coffee, I asked some of the colleagues whether, if you think about a technology like mobile money, it is unique to Africa. It's nowhere else. Imagine post-quantum technology where we are not able to secure our mobile banking system. It will collapse the whole mobile money economy in Africa. So this is these are some of the impacts that we are looking at. So whether we we think, oh, this is some fancy technology. I mean, people ask me, you are in Kigali, you are in Ghana, why should you care about quantum? Why should you care about quantum technology? And these are some of the things that I am talking about. And so the point is that no single nation is expected to have all the elements within the quantum ecosystem that will sustain the quantum technologies that they develop. And therefore, it is important for countries and regions to collaborate. One of the things I think is very critical is that decision makers and policy makers have to be made aware of the capabilities and the impact of what these quantum technologies are. And that will enable them prepare and put structures in place to plan for the future. I have been involved in, on the World Economic Forum Global Council for the Future of Quantum Economy. And earlier this year, we released a blueprint for a quantum economy blueprint. One of the goals of the blueprint is to support nations and academics, industry, to plan for the future of quantum and understand how the different elements of the whole quantum ecosystem and where they can place themselves as they prepare for that. And I'll just end by saying that here in Rwanda, we are working with the NCST based on this blueprint to get Rwanda to be the first African country to have a quantum strategy. We have already made a lot of progress on that, and we are looking forward to more. And then from this, we can scale and get other African countries also involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Prince. It is exciting to know. It is exciting to know application of quantum computing, particularly when you talk about drug discoveries, application in agriculture, and several other areas. There will be some follow-up questions at one point, but let me turn to Chomoro Mikeka. Your question is quite relevant to the work you do in Africa. So the question is relevant to science, technology, and innovation. What are the opportunities for the leadership and the scientists on the African continent in the context of quantum or disruptive technology? Thank you.
Thank you. I think you have been biased and heavily adopted by quantum, but otherwise, indeed, the disruptive technologies. First and foremost, I would like to thank sincerely the leadership of Remy Kriyon and Virgin Oga, the principal advisor to the chief scientist of Quebec, and for having identified us to be part of the panel this time around, but also on the very important theme of transformative imperative or transformation imperative on the continent of Africa. So you've shown leadership, and that's exactly the leadership that I would like to talk about, that which we need also on the African continent. Coming to disruptive technologies, as we understand it from the governments, I'm speaking here with hindsight of my previous experiences sitting to chair the African continent, 55 member states, on the specialized Bureau of Education, Training, Science, Technology, and Innovation. I've been chairing that since 2022. But also for being the chair for the economic bloc for the Southern African Development Cooperation SADC, where also I have seen 16 member states, see how they roar since 2021 down to this time around. This is my 4th year giving leadership on science, technology, and innovation. And therefore, how do we view disruptive technologies? We view disruptive technologies as a function of several variables. in that court, those variables must demonstrate how effective they are to bring in the transformation imperative, in other words, change. So I'll just highlight 4 functions or 4 variables in the function of disruptive technologies. The first is the function. Functions of governments will be affected or are being affected by disruptive technologies. Secondly is the operations. The operations of governments cannot remain the same in the face of disruptive technologies. And therefore, governments are sensitive and aware and have to be responsive and dynamic to the operational changes. Secondly is the system. The systems of government, normally we say government is a system, no single person, officer can claim to be government. So it's system. And therefore, systems in the face of disruptive technologies are changing. And lastly, the habits of the citizens. The habits cannot remain the same in the face of disruptive technologies. And this also goes to appetite of the citizens. And therefore, I have coined a new term, which I'm saying is a FOSH. Disruptive technologies are a function of FOSH. Functions, operations, systems, and habits changing in the face of disruptive technologies. And therefore, what are the governments doing? In the context of Africa as a continent, 55 member states, in my experience interacting with the Francophone, the Portuguese bloc, the English bloc, the Anglophone, because I speak all these languages. By the way, I speak 11 languages, and just to make sure that I have a balance and favor and frame, across the continent and beyond. We have seen that in our government architecture, normally we have the executive arm of government, judiciary, and the legislative arm of government. Sometimes we also do acknowledge the 4th arm of government, which is media, fraternity. But the executive arms of governments in Africa are busy ensuring that they establish departments, directorates, ministries responsible for science, technology, and innovation. And therefore, there is an imperative to come up with leaders who can drive that agenda on behalf of governments. So this we are seeing happening. So some countries have ministries, some departments, some directorates, some units, some divisions. But at least there is in there science, technology, innovation, either guided by continental agenda or regional protocols on science, technology, and innovation. And therefore, secondly, we are also seeing that to choose, because this is the most difficult, assignments that governments have now. How do they identify a leader to drive STI or science, technology, and innovation, agenda in member states? So sometimes the question is, should we look at those who have studied or those who have a background in STI, being, applications of STEM? Or should we target those who have done or are qualified with, STEM, degrees and options, like my colleague here, astronomist, the quantum computer? Should these be the leaders for STI? Others are saying maybe we should target ICT or IT. Others would be looking at HAS, humanities, arts, social sciences. I did a study in my country in looking at trace a study of close to 18,000 graduates from all over 21 academic higher education institutions, just universities, public and private. We have 6 public universities. All of them, we analyzed the data and then discovered that for STI only 2.5% had qualifications relevant to to STI, and we had 8.8% relevant to IT or ICT, and we had 30.1% relevant to STEM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics without arts, and then we had 58.9% relevant or qualifications with respect to humanities, arts, and social sciences. So who therefore would find that it's much easier to identify a leader to drive this agenda from where the concentration is higher. But is that the answer? So that has been the challenge and considerations that the government doing. Even if you have elected, appointed, or hired a leader for STI, in a directorate, in a department, and relevant institutions in governments, including the ministries, the next thing is that what could all the others also do in that? So we have seen advocacy, championship of leadership in terms of championing or evangelizing or advocating. All these are allowed. And there was a time that I used to be called internet evangelist, particularly using, you know, the white spaces. So I was an evangelist in that regard for internet using those technologies. We need these kind of leaders, even if they may not be formally and officially appointed in government institutions. So we need that in Africa to make the appropriate huge noise in this regard. And then the next is also to identify leaders who can transform Africa by establishing or leading the establishment of important STI infrastructure or infrastructure for science, technology, and innovation to motivate the promise that STI brings in terms of economic transformation, economic changes. So we're referring to establishments of investor innovation pods, unipods. We have one in Rwanda, in Malawi, Uganda, and a few other countries are moving to that. These are places where you can do rapid prototyping, precision manufacturing, and linkages with all the others. Fab labs, fabrication labs. Rwanda has it, Malawi has it, and several others. Design studios, innovation garages, innovation, hubs and related aspects. So these aspects, you really need to have leaders who have an engineering, understanding, because this is not a place to play. Yes, to play, but to produce, the promises what STI is leading to that. Lastly, very lastly, we're looking for leaders. Leaders who can sit at G77 plus China, leaders who can sit at the United Nations General Assembly and make a case for Africa as a continent, but also, motivate the kind of transformations that we're looking for in terms of STI, and to begin to observe 16th September of every year as a South-to-South Day for science, technology, and engineering in this region by the G77 declarations, Cuba, Havana. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I would like to, thank you. I would like to give an opportunity to Nevin Makram, if she's still online, an opportunity to give us more information on the work you are doing, particularly on genetic data analysis, big data, analytic data, particularly focusing on real issues that affect Egypt, but also the continent. For instance, addressing genetical diseases, degenerative diseases, and chronic diseases. Thank you.
Actually, we're focusing on healthcare nowadays. So we started by a new system. That's the healthcare insurance system. It's a universal one. And we started from the data. So we had an initiative, a governmental initiative. It's called 1 Million Seha initiative. And with this initiative, we were trying to collect good data, not noisy data, because that was a main issue, as in all countries. So having good data that is reliable, that is complete, that is accurate, and having one patient file so as to be able to share it with all of the institutions. So whenever the patient is a citizen or any person who is currently in Egypt needs to get any advice or any service related to healthcare, he can present his ID or his personal ID, if he's Egyptian, or his passport, so as to be able to retrieve his file and for healthcare professionals to be able to help him. So that was the start. And then we were tackling the point on a regional level. That's why Egypt focused on the genome project. With the genome project, they're working on the genes, kind of discovering the most common diseases that might be affecting us as Egyptians and as Africans as well, and to be ready with all of the tools, techniques, equipment, facilities. So that was the policies, and these are the currently challenges for us, how to bridge the gap between the science, and here we're talking about a consortium of universities and institutions, educational institutions, who are working on this project, so as to be able to present the final report to the government and for the government to give it to the policymakers, because again, we're talking about data-driven, not only data-driven decision-making, but also data-driven planning, and to be able to provide better healthcare services. Or on the other hand, I think that's when where the contribution of artificial intelligence is, to be able to work more on avoiding these diseases or on the drug discovery, so as to provide more personalized and more effective treatment for all of us as Africans.
Thank you so much. I appreciate. Kevin, I would like to ask you a question. Let me give some background. The United Nations Conference and Trade Development Organization report 2021 has predicted that disruptive technologies are going to be the main source of income in terms of real money, real resources in many countries. And so in the context of what you are doing, hosting the biggest radio telescope in South Africa, could you shed more light in terms of what you are doing to ensure that other African countries benefit from this continental telescope, particularly for continental development?
No, thanks very much. First, a practical answer, then a philosophical one. On a practical side, I think, when South Africa started investing in astronomy, they immediately tried to bring in other African countries. In fact, that biggest radio telescope is a precursor to an even bigger one called the Square Kilometre Array, which is a partnership with 9 African countries. And the original bid was that we make this telescope a continent-sized telescope. Now imagine we've got this Earth, right? And if you want to build a big telescope, it's only the size of the Earth. you can't get bigger than that. And with radio astronomy, you can build lots of dishes and then send the signals to one point, and then effectively it's like having one big telescope. And so these dishes, putting these dishes across the continent, part of the vision was that in order for these radio telescope dishes to speak to each other, we're going to need fiber laid completely across the continent. It will be a complete step change in terms of accessibility, but you're talking about data rates that are just like exascale. It's unimaginable at the moment, and the quantum guys are going to be the ones needed to solve, to process all that data, right? But that now has led to the establishment of the African Astronomical Society. We've got a huge number of programs happening across the continent to grow astronomy and to develop the skills and capacity, not just in the field of astronomy, but in engineering, in big data analysis, and so on. And so we're sticking with the rest of the world in that we want the benefit of disruptive technologies to do the usual impact. On the philosophical side, and maybe this is a message for everyone here, if you go out, the next time you look at the moon, imagine what the moon sees. We're all living on this one planet. And when we talk about disruptive technologies and sort of the growth, contributing to economies and stuff, maybe the disruption we need is to stop thinking about, how much money we can make from the next big project and look at the world, as planet Earth. And because if we share everything, now in the astronomy field, for example, they developed this amazing technology and it's all open source, it's all open access because it's all about just exploring. If we can have more attitude that let us look after our fellow human beings, then I think that, that's the kind of disruption we need to our thinking. Don't look at disruptive technologies as something that's going to be, that will grow us economically, but that will grow us as a species, that will benefit everyone. I think that's where we need to move towards. So.
Okay. I hope doesn't mean that the telescope is not going to help in a national development.
No, we're still on the normal path.
Okay, good. Thank you, Prince. Some follow-up question for you. You have elaborated on quantum computing. I was very particularly excited when you talk about quantum computing in terms of what the private sector can play in terms of bridging the gaps between institutions, between nations, but also between continents. Do you think that the private sector at one point in time is going to use quantum computing in really benefiting the African citizens to uplift their standards of living so that we see it real in our everyday lives?
Okay, thank you very much. So currently, there is about $40 billion investment so far across the world in quantum technologies. A lot of this is coming from the private sector. These are the big tech companies, IBM, Google, and so on. There's a lot of investments from the global north. And in Africa, I think from data from Korea, we have just about $3 million investments, mainly from South Africa. By 2040, it is projected that the investment in quantum technologies will reach over $100 billion. Like I said earlier on, Africa by 2030 will have the largest young population. So at least 4 out of every 10 young person in the world will be African. It is important that we take advantage to prepare our young people for the future to participate in these technologies. We need to train a lot of people in these fields so that we can become ready to take advantage of these technologies to develop ourselves and to benefit ourselves and the world at large. I would like to mention that I am on the advisory committee of the Open Quantum Institute, which has just recently been set up by INGSA. It's based at CERN. And the goal is two things: to provide access, open access for quantum technologies to different people across the world, especially in the global south, and also education, providing quality education that will prepare our young people to take part of these technologies when they emerge. It is important that one of the reasons why AIMS created Quantum Leap Africa, it is important that we should not be playing catch up in these technologies. We want to play a leading role in the development of some of these technologies. Whether it is the computing side or the sensing side or the communication, we really want to play a leading role in the development of these technologies. And like I mentioned earlier, for applications and for Africa in particular, drug discovery, one can save, by using a quantum computer, one can save generations of clinical trials and all kinds of tests and lead to a good result that will help us develop a drug for some of the diseases that we have on this continent. Development of fertilizers as well. There are complicated techniques to develop ammonia gas, for example, that with the help of a quantum computer, one can leapfrog and develop better ways of dealing with this and provide a lot of fertilizer for our farmers on the continent. So the impact on the continent is huge, and we need to play an active role in the development of the technologies.
Thank you, Prince. I turn to my brother Chomoro Mikeka. You sound very political in the way you expressed your approach to disruptive technology, talking about global perspective, the leadership in Africa, what should be done and what should not be done. Can you narrow down to more concrete ways in which African countries have invested in disruptive technologies, giving practical examples, because I'm sure you have them. You are on the board of Internet of Things, the University of Rwanda, you are collaborating with other African countries. What have been the real world investments in terms of disruptive technologies, and what should be the leadership in Africa do going forward?
Thank you.
Brief, please. Thank you.
Yeah, so first and foremost, can I ask, hello? Hello? Please come, yeah, in green, here. Yeah, please come, please come. So practical examples. So there is a book last week, I actually have published a book with the Grand Pen Africa, springboard for industrialization through science, technology, and innovation through marine schools. So you just heard in this one. So come on the stage here and see. Are you in university, in high school, or where you speak? I'm 10. Please come here. Yeah,
I'm 10.
Yeah, which class are you in?
Year 6.
Year 6. So that's basic primary. You see, so the book, is to ensure.
I hope the book is hers.
No. She look at it, and then I'll get it back. I see your mom in there. But that's the goal. I mean, like in my country, we have 5.285 million of her age, in basic, in the grades that is being spoken. And we want them, exactly as Prince over there has said, and him, that they begin to grasp and to do these things, not learning theoretically, but, building them, what we call project problem-based experiential learning. So the artifacts are in there. Regarding at the level where we are, in terms of STI leadership, from 2012-14 thereabout, Africa said, well, enough is enough that we can, play catch-up in terms of using science, technology, innovation, or engineering infrastructure. Can we together, put up cases or proposals in the region, continental, have been put up? That's how I came out to be in Rwanda here, in terms of the centers of excellence, funded by World Bank, committed by governments and institutions. Here in Rwanda, just with the University of Rwanda, we have, center of excellence in data science, in energy. These are precursors for serious, STI infrastructure, IoT. So from IoT, where I am a visiting professor here in Rwanda, in Kigali, Nyarugenge campus, and where most of some are here, but also working with the National Council for Science and Technology, which is leading an apex body in Rwanda here, sitting in the office of the President and Cabinet, and being the precursors also for other member states. It's where we see crystallization, avenues, regulation, yes, a little bit, but promotion of more of disruptive technologies to learn them, but also challenge postgraduate students to face these ones and inform us what amenable and what is not.
Thank you so much. So ladies and gentlemen, we would like to give you an opportunity to ask questions, to give your comments to the panel of experts. Utilize the time, utilize them, and let us know from you what more they should elaborate on. Thank you. Could you say your name and briefly your question? You may direct it to somebody if you want.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the four presenters. Sorry. Found it fascinating, and I'm also a physicist. I'm a particle physicist, so I have a particularly interest in trying to understand how these grand projects of science can relate to national development, community growth, and so on. See, what I heard is really like a trickle-down effect. You've got all this big stuff going on, and somehow magically that's going to find its way, into building a better quality of life of people and so on. So the one question I always have is, clearly, the internet was born at the World Wide Web was born at CERN in Geneva, out of necessity. Data analytics, the major growth was at CERN. The collisions taking place at 1 billion per second. How do you process that data? So clearly there's a tremendous amount of work going on there. The big question, it seems to me, is how to allow these technologies to become much more ubiquitous, if you like, in getting our science to begin to take those big developments that are taking place and galvanize, galvanize the impact of those technologies it seems to me at least that we have to go back to this idea of understanding the relationship between supply and demand. You know? What is the demand of our societies and what is the supply? And what are the hindrances to allowing that supply to take place? See, what I didn't hear at all today was capacity building, you know, the idea of education, skills development, and so on. Thank you so much.
The book which I just shared is the Human Capital Development. I'll talk of 5.3 million because this should be deliberate. I mentioned also of 2.5% of STI, 8% ICT, 30, STEM, and 60% humanities, arts, and social sciences. And governments are asking, what have we benefited with a human capital close to 60% over the 4 to 8 decades? What can we benefit if we deliberately begin to invest for STI to boost, for example, from 2.5%, which is almost the average across African countries, very few, to 25% to 50%? Can we indeed make gains, or it is another loss? So this is indeed what the heads of state and government made, for example, in August last year in Tanzania, the Human Capital Summit, but also the Doha Program of Action, which is human capital, but also leveraging on the articles and articulations of science, technology, and innovation. I just wanted to share those aspects. Thank you. Africa is concerned.
Thank you. Please, Kevin.
Thanks very much for the question, Prof. I think I can speak from the astronomy side, yeah, human capital development is, I think, fundamental. I think in our society we want problem solvers, and the way to get problem solvers is to find some nice problems and throw people at it. And astronomy tends to, give us these hard problems. And everything along the way, when we're trying to figure out, the evolution of galaxies, the number of things that we need to do to sort of get there, whether it's building telescopes, whether it's analyzing the data, whether it's just trying to work out the science and the physics, every step of the way there's human capacity development. And I think like lots of the investment in astronomy is built on human capacity development. So it was remiss not to mention that explicitly. But what we're doing in astronomy as well is looking at all the other aspects besides human capital development. And that aspects includes things like, in astronomy, dark sky tourism is a massive growing field. And we've been pushing the idea of there's more people living in cities now than living in rural areas. How do we develop rural areas? Well, what are the resources they have? A clear sky is a massive resource that we have in rural areas. How do we rally that and use it as a stimulus for tourism and for economic development in those areas? We're looking at things like mental health. We're working with psychologists to see how people being out in a dark sky area, like looking at the stars and thinking about things, these have positive mental health effects, especially after COVID. In fact, during COVID, we ran programs that looked at trying to get people to look out their window at the moon, at the stars, in order to try and free them from the anxiety and stress that lockdown causes. So there are lots of different aspects. In terms of your question, what prevents these disruptive technology or these big technologies from really making a massive impact? I think it's the nature in which we sort of keep things closed. It's the nature that we want to maintain intellectual property. We talk about open science and open access, but if we are truly open science and open access, that's what would take those technologies from CERN and from the observatories and so on and make it completely available. Now, people do it amongst scientists, but we need to also figure out how we do it with industry so that people, you know, like with COVID, with the vaccines, I mean, if we were truly open, we would find ways for the whole world to benefit from these technologies.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any
other questions from the audience?
No, I have just a small addition.
Okay,
30
please,
seconds.
please,
Yeah.
please.
You know, if you scan 2024 top 10 disruptive technologies in there, because we didn't talk about that, we just left it for the audience to navigate. But there is virtual reality, and augmented reality is also one. And so this is where, for example, astronomy, there is demand from the higher education institutions to explore, for example, even to the red planet, the Mars, and all the other aspects. You know, so with that, all that put into a virtual reality kit and given to young, space explorers like her and others, you know, it's helping to be able to navigate to enchanted waters, and that demand is happening to be there. But also, recently, we have had postgraduate students working with the Square Kilometer Area and others, simply to begin to explore and sending signals. I just wanted to stop in there regarding, is there human beings who can hear us by sending radio frequency signals, low Earth orbit.
Thank you. A question for the audience, please.
So thank you very much. So I'm an African in the diaspora. So I have one foot in Africa and the other foot is in Europe somewhere. And then I was really happy to hear from you that you're not only thinking about the urban areas, but you're also thinking about the rural areas. And it was like music to my ears because I work with rural development issues. But then I have a question, not being indoctrinated. So I was asking my neighbor here, you mentioned a quantum computer, and then I was like, I'm still on a laptop. What the hell is he talking about? So what is a quantum computer? And then the other thing I started thinking about is that I live in Sweden, and Sweden has one of the highest proportion per capita of unicorns. And those unicorns actually came out from the tech companies, and it was the computers. And the reason why we got these computers was because there was this huge subsidies whereby anybody, whether you were poor in the rural areas or whatever, you could afford to have a computer. And all children, you talk about that book, in Sweden, have access to computers, laptops, which they can take home and which they can have. And this was, I learned this morning, that this was a science policy. There was a whole session on science policy. So I'm wondering, to all you, the speakers here, what sort of science policies would be needed in a continent like Africa? You mentioned $40 billion being made available mostly by the big tech companies such as IBM and others. What sort of science policy, now that we've been here for 2 days discussing science and policy, what sort of science policies would be needed in Africa or in the global south by the leaders based on the scientific communities, experts such as yours in physics and quantum, whatever the skies are and the stars? What is it that will be needed? I mean, what would it take for every child or every individual in the global south to have access to electricity, firstly, and then to these computers so that we can discuss such as, because we're privileged. I'm very privileged to be here. At least I can ask you a question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
We start from there, I'll pick it up there.
Thank you. So a quantum computer, so it's hard to explain what a quantum computer is, but as I said earlier on, so the computers we have now, we call them classical computers, and information is stored in bits. But in a quantum computer, bits which are just zeros and ones. I mean, in a quantum computer, one can have possible combinations of storing information, and we call this qubits. And it allows one to do far more powerful computations and based on the laws of fundamental quantum mechanics. So these computers, when they currently, let me assure you that for now, there is no error-correcting functional quantum computer yet. There are a lot of investments and research going on. We still need to answer some fundamental questions. It's not just an engineering problem, but we still need to answer some fundamental questions to allow us to be able to do this. But we are not too far away. I know that on one hand, people have said there's a lot of hype about a quantum computer, but we agree that they will arrive. Some have put, let's say, in the next 10 to 15 years.
Thank you. Thank you.
So it is, that is where we are looking at, and it is very important that we prepare ourselves for this. Now, to answer your second question, from the point of view of policy, for us at AIMS, we want to look at education. So we believe that, for example, the idea of a university needs to be reinvented, and the best place to do this is Africa. And we are reinventing the idea of a university and creating innovative ways of educating people. And let me say that in the next 10 years, we have committed to training over 1,500 students from across the continent at the higher level, master's level, most of which will specialize in some of the disruptive technologies that we have spoken about.
Thank you.
To
Mikeka, do you want to
yes.
give some comments?
Thank you so much, Eugene, moderator. One of the policy priority areas, statements, but also strategies from now going forward to ensure that human capital development, education is able to build from the fundamentals of the young ones whom we have right now. We are proposing, and this is also being put in most of the policy documents, 5-window matrix for education. So you can call this one 5-window matrix. The first window, you can learn it from the Johari window, from the behavior sciences. So the first window, on air. The young ones from grade 1, even the preschool, should have a device, a computing device for TV and radio. The second window is online, internet. So we allow them to be switched online, because this is within the African Union digital strategy, but also the economic blocks, digital transformation strategies. And we already say this should be provided for connectivity, and therefore with the devices, all them placed in the school. And the third window is offline technologies. The offline technologies, similarly, again, devices, digital libraries, everything else, creating a Wi-Fi hotspots within the classrooms, and the young ones leapfrogging. You can see how he or he is doing it there.
Thank you.
Yeah. And
Good.
lastly, the print. So we are saying beyond a notebook and a book, a print, they should be exposed within and around them, all the devices and the gadgets, and begin to compute. And that will take them to leapfrog to the avenues we're looking at in terms of quantum QTs, quantum dots, and related aspects. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So our panel have started to give their final remarks. Thank you, Mikeka. Can I ask Kevin to give final remarks briefly as we conclude our session?
Okay, maybe I'll sort of react to this one with the final remarks. I think there's a fundamental problem in that disruptive technologies will cause inequality to be worse and worse, because we can't. And I hear what you're saying. I think it's an ideal to have every child with a laptop, or every child with some sort of technology. But while we're busy getting those children those technologies, the other children in other parts of the world are like jumping ahead. And so as long as the whole sort of point of disruptive technologies is that it moves super fast, it moves exponentially, and that inequality divide is spreading. What we're trying to do with this tourism in rural areas and stuff like that, it's not just about economic development. It's about bringing people who are privileged into a community that they don't normally associate with, and making a human connection. making a human connection across inequalities, because, you know, at the end of the day, so the programs that we have in rural areas, for example, is about homestays. It's about making human connection. And I think that what we need, and I don't think we can do this through policies, because what we need is human connections for people to, you know, when you're driving around the streets and you see someone begging for money, you see them as a human being. When the world heard that South Africa had the Omicron variant, what was their first reaction? They didn't say, wow, well done, South Africa, your scientists discovered this variant. They said, no, close all borders with South Africa. Now, that's the attitude that needs to change. It's about people seeing each other as human beings, seeing each other as you know, as fellow human beings. And so when I said this about what does the moon see when we look at the moon, it's about seeing the Earth as a planet, seeing people as someone together. And when we talk about science advice, and this is my closing remarks, when we talk about science advice and you know, science diplomacy, I don't think, you know, it's like we're within almost an echo chamber of we can talk to each other about this, and then we go into the real world. And one of the speakers in an earlier panel yesterday, I'm sorry to put him on the spot, but I won't mention his name, but he said something along the lines that the EU has good science relations with South Africa, but they may disagree on some foreign policies. And I think it's funny, we're here in Rwanda, we have, you know, a history that we're learning from, but all our science relations don't lead to us understanding each other in the other, you know, in the human aspects. Now, how we achieve that, that's the disruption we need. It's for us to be more humane to each other.
Thank you, Kevin. I understand you have a commitment, and that's why you are keeping it short. But let me give Nevin, who is online, an opportunity to give final remarks as we wind up.
The human connection, because if we are to search for the needs, to identify the needs of Africa, and then to work towards implementing the disruptive technologies in Africa, then I think that we should focus on the last SDG, the SDG 17. If we're aiming at sustainable development, so definitely we should focus on the global partnerships. And I think this event, along with other events and other projects, can help us focus on redefining again the educational systems so as to include all of the advancements and bridging the gap between science and policies, and providing some advice and recommendations for our policymakers. But let's take it from a more global perspective, from, we're talking about Africa, then from African perspective. So I think that's what we should focus on. And I really thank you for inviting me to attend such an important event and a very interesting panel.
Thank you, Nevin. We appreciate. Keep in touch with us online and on other communications as we form stronger collaborations. Ladies and gentlemen, we are winding up our session, and I would like to provide a few key takeaway messages that have run across all our panel members. One, disruptive technologies will impact our society, whether we like it or not. And so the African leadership agenda, resource allocation, political commitment need to match the ever-changing technological shift that we see in Africa, but also globally. But the good news is that there are huge opportunities in Africa in terms of the leadership, in terms of capacity, in terms of political will, in terms of policy, to ensure that Africa matches the ever-growing needs of disruptive technologies. Therefore, intra-Africa and inter-Africa collaboration and cooperation, as well as global cooperation, to utilize the opportunities of disruptive technologies will support Africa's development. Ladies and gentlemen, let us thank our panel members for insightful discussions. A lot of work going on. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your insights. Thank you.